Hi everyone, in this video we're going to be taking a look at how to write a report for anyone that's studying Level 1 or Level 2 Functional Skills English. Now if you haven't done so already, please consider joining our membership channel. With this we'll actually be able to provide you with actual feedback of anything that you produce and give you that support leading up to your exam. So the first thing I'd like you to do is just look at the different forms of writing, and we're going to attempt a few challenges as well. So over the course leading up to your writing assessment, you're going to go through a few of these things. So you may have already looked at an article, writing a speech, writing a narrative, writing a leaflet, writing a report, and writing a letter. Now if you've covered other ones as well, that's absolutely fantastic. There are a lot of different forms of writing that you need to get to grips with. So the first thing I'd like you to think about is which of these have you covered so far? Now, if there's any gaps in your knowledge, if there's any that you don't feel too confident about, do let us know in the comments below, and also check out our other videos that cover quite a wide range of the different forms of writing. For the super challenge then, I'd like you to rank each of these different forms in terms of which ones you feel most to least confident about. So the reason why I ask this one is because a lot of the time when students go into the exam, there'll be certain forms of writing that I feel more confident about than others. So if that is the case, we need to really identify which ones do you need to work on going forward so you can actually go into the exam feeling confident and secure that we're going to get a pass. And finally, in your own opinion, what form of writing is the hardest? And try and justify your answer. Again, if you want to, share your ideas in the comments below. Personally, one of the hardest ones that I find students struggle with is writing a report, and that's kind of the justification of why we're going to go through it in a bit more detail today. By the end of the lesson, you'll be able to understand how to approach report writing, analyse a model response, and finally, apply your understanding to write a response to an exam question. So again, with that last one, it's really important that you're receiving feedback anytime that you produce a really detailed piece of written work. Always make sure you've got someone at hand to give you that feedback, because otherwise we don't really know if we're going in the right direction. We don't really know what to focus on in terms of improvement as well. Look at the exam question below and attempt the challenges that follow. So here's a very typical question that you get for the report writing then. So it says, you've been asked to write a report for people who are not technology experts. Explain how technology, for example mobile phones, the internet and social media, benefits society. In your report you could include technology in everyday life, how it can be used in business or in employment, technology in the world as a whole, and also what life would be like without technology. So even though you're not expected to be a technology expert with this question, they would expect that you can apply your own knowledge to actually answer this question, and that's kind of covered in the bullet points there. Now when you do get a question like this, it's important to first of all identify the TAP of the exam question. Now if you're not too sure what I mean by this, when we say TAP, we mean the topic, the audience and the purpose, and this is just going to allow you to break down the question and actually truly understand what it is they want you to focus on, and to make sure we get our most marks when we're writing our response. Secondly, a good idea when you've got a question like this is to come up with 3 or 4 strong ideas to plan your paragraphs. And that's going to form the base of our actual argument and going to allow us to actually hit the word count as well, which typically for a question like this is around 250 to 300 words. The mega challenge: how does an article differ from the other forms of writing you've studied so far? Okay, so in our previous video we looked at an article, we looked at using things like headlines and subheadings to help break down that information. So think about what we went through in our last video, and how does the different forms, the different presentational features actually have an effect on our interpretation of the question. Class feedback. Check your understanding against the ones below. So first of all, we're going to deal with the challenge. So what is the TAP? So firstly, the topic would be technology. Specifically, we're going to focus on the benefits of it. Next, the audience. A little bit vague with this one. People who have little to no knowledge about technology. You could argue this is either going to be people who are very, very young, or arguably people who are a little bit older and may not use technology in their everyday lives. The purpose: to write a report on how technology is used. Now this is a really good thing to do to break it down, especially when we think about the purpose. So to write a report, It tells us that we need to consider how we're actually organising and presenting our information as well. Now for the super challenge, you may not agree with these ideas, you might be able to come up with better ones yourself, but these are just some simple ideas for our paragraphs. So first of all, technology has made communication better. Now this is quite a broad idea, but what we mean obviously is that you have mobile phones, we also have email, you also have a number of different things that can help us communicate, such as social media. Technology can help improve education. Again, we're having literally a lesson via the internet, which wouldn't have been available, let's say 30 or 40 years ago. And finally, new computers and games consoles help bring about a lot of entertainment. Now, when you are thinking about structuring your paragraphs, it's important to start with the most important one first, and then go down from strongest to weakest as well. So you can see why I put new computer games and games consoles towards the bottom there as well. So for the final one, what makes a report different? So we looked at an article in the last one, so how does a report actually stand out from it? So this is one of the harder forms of writing. When you do a report, you need to do the following things. So use a title. Remain impartial. If you're not sure what we mean by that, that is where you are not holding a bias, you are not telling people your own unfair opinion, you're just presenting the key information as it lies. Use facts and statistics, and have a suggested outcome at the end. The whole point of a report, generally speaking, is to produce information on something that might need to be improved or something that already works well and you might want to add to it as well. So we must have a suggested outcome at the end. Planning a response. To respond effectively to the question, you need to consider the following points. And these can be broken down really into two key points. So firstly, what are the key features of a report? So in terms of organisation and presentation, what language techniques would be the most effective in a response? And we're going to go through those 2 points now. Use the guidance to help structure your writing. So for the key features within a report then, we need to bear in mind our purpose. So the purpose of any report really is to give information on a given topic. Format features, so a report should include headings for the different sections. It's important to also consider as well using things like bullet points to break down either the positives or the negatives of your report. And level of formality, so a report will require a formal approach, so making sure we're not using any slang or colloquial language. So our key term, impartial, that's what we looked at in the previous part of the video, where the writer doesn't hold a bias and writes in a matter-of-fact way. So very different from some of the other forms that we've had. And if you think about a teacher's top tip before we move on, remember this is not the same as persuasive writing. Report writing needs to be informative, factual, and impartial. Learning recap. Look at the DeForest techniques. Think about which ones would be effective in a report. So here we have our normal acronym then, so if you're not used to this, it's going to be important to be aware of all of these because they're going to have a key role in any form of writing that you do. So we have direct address, alliteration, fact, opinion, rhetorical question, repetition, emotive language, statistics, a triplet, and those are the main ones there as well. Okay, so have a look down the list there and try and really think for a report, which of these terms should you use? Now if you're not sure what every single one of these mean, do check out our other videos that go in more detail as well. Think about a teacher's top tip as well. Remember that you have to be aware of the audience and what kind of techniques will actually help to connect them with the text as well. Class feedback. Check your understanding against the teacher's ideas. So even though we have a lot of different techniques in our DeForest acronym, you don't have to necessarily use every single one in your writing. So specifically for a report then we're going to focus largely on things like facts. So this is very important in a report as it gives validity to the writing and shows you understand the topic well. Statistics. This is helpful to show the positives and negatives of a report. Opinion. So this is a good one to use because it's based on the findings of the report. You can give an opinion as to how the problems can be solved. And the last one, direct address. This allows you to relate back to the question. So if we think about the actual question, how it was phrased, You have been asked to carry out a report, okay? So actually having some ownership, having some personal allowance there as well is going to be important because you're the one that's hypothetically carried out this report. Look at the response. Do you think it would achieve a pass? Try and justify your opinion. So it says then, the importance of technology. In this report, I'll look at the good things that are caused by technology. Specifically, I'll break down the following areas. Technology in everyday life, how it can be used in business or employment, technology in the world as a whole, and what life would be like without technology. In the UK, most of the people who live there need technology in their daily lives. Mobile phones are owned by over 90% of the country, which shows how important they are to our lives. Phones help people to communicate to other people who are miles away from them with a simple press of a button. Class feedback. Check your answers against the teacher's feedback. So here we have the report that we just read through. Now if you want to take some time, pause the video and look through it at your own leisure, please feel free to do so. We're now going to look at the teacher's feedback to see what works well and what needs to be improved. Okay, so teacher's feedback then. First of all then, we're going to start with WWW, what went well, and identify some of the strengths of the response. So the response has used the correct organisational or presentational features of a report. So we can see that because they've used a title, and they've also used paragraphs as well as bullet points to help set out the information. A range of punctuation has been used effectively. Now I actually don't 100% agree with this one, to be honest with you. When we say a range, we actually mean that they've used, let's say 3 or 4 different forms of punctuation. However, what they have used well is this colon here, and a colon is used to indicate that we're going to give a list, and it has actually listed the key things that they're going to talk about in the response, and you can see that there. We do have things like commas as well, but other than that, really, the punctuation isn't really that effective, in my opinion. Again, some teachers will disagree. I think because they've used an actual colon there, that it's considered to be quite an impressive form of punctuation, so they might give you a few more marks just for that form of punctuation. Some language has been used within the response, so we have there very clearly a statistic where it's talking about 90%, which we know from our previous slide, that's obviously something that's going to work in our favour. EBI then, so even better if. So how can we improve it? The response would not meet the required word count for the question. So again, as we said earlier, for this kind of response, we're looking at 250 to 300 words, and at the moment, this just isn't quite cutting it. So a good thing to do if you want to use this response as maybe a starting point, use some of these ideas, but build on it, develop it, and see if you can actually take it to that higher level of the word count. There are a number of ideas that appear undeveloped. Okay, so if we think about what they've actually wrote, there are some good ideas there, but they don't really follow through. So in the UK, most of the people who live there need technology in their daily lives. Okay, so they've made a really good point there, but they haven't developed it. Why? Why do we need technology in our everyday lives? Okay, how do they help us? What kind of tasks do we need to perform on a day-to-day basis that would require technology? So it's made a good point, but it hasn't really developed it, so it's moved on to kind of go on about the next thing that it wants to say. There are numerous errors in spelling and grammar, so hopefully you can look over this yourself and notice that there's quite a few there that need to be changed. Some of the big ones to avoid as well are things like using the wrong there, things like that that are just going to really make you stand out as a low-level response. Okay, so again, if you've got any extra things, extra feedback you would give this response, please do give it in the feedback in the comments below. Always good to have that narrative and to see how you guys are getting on as you actually produce your responses as well. In terms of our lessons next week then, we're going to be thinking about how to write a leaflet. This is often something that comes up as a difficult thing for people to approach, so we're going to move on and look out how to write that. We're going to look at the difference between persuasive writing and informative writing and making sure we can get that clear in our heads for which forms of writing we need to use which type of language and which kind of informative or formative writing, and then how to construct a response for academic success. So going forward, guys, if you want to actually have a go at writing your report, do use everything we've went through today to get yourself going. If you do want any feedback, join our membership, and that will help us to just have that open discussion, give you some feedback and support as you develop and practice and make your way towards the assessment. If you need any additional support or help, the new videos will be added every single week. Alternatively, leave us a comment below or visit our partner channel Buckingham on Teaching for more lessons and guidance on all things English. Thanks ever so much for listening, guys, and keep up the good work and all the revision. Best of luck with your assessments in the future. Bye bye.